Hey everyone, I'm your host, Robbie Strazynski, and thanks so much for joining us on episode number 7 of Cards Chat, the friendliest poker podcast in town. On this episode, we have the pleasure of welcoming Lynn Gilmartin. Lynn is the anchor for the World Poker Tour, a member of the Australian Poker Hall of Fame, and one of the most congenial, positive, respected, and well-liked personalities in poker today. It really is such a pleasure to get to speak with you, Lynn. Welcome to the Cards Chat Podcast.
Oh, what a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to speak to you always.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the check's in the mail, right?
Yeah.
There you go. That's what we want. Got to start out with the laugh. That's what it's all about.
I love it.
So Lynn, I know you've been keeping extremely busy over these past few months, and especially these past couple of weeks. Can you give us sort of a general update on what you've been up to work-wise?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, as 2020 has been for everyone, of course. But I I booked two movies, not one but two films in Australia. So I've been working on those for the last few months, which has just been an absolute dream. Obviously, we were in lockdown for a few months in LA, and uh, everything like the World Poker Tour. We've been so busy online now, so that was keeping me busy, and I was just kind of happy at home making my content with my green screen at home and producing videos and things and reporting on our events that we were having and then suddenly I got this audition come up for a film that was shooting in Australia, and I thought, what, the world is on pause right now, like how on earth is anything going into production? This is crazy, but okay. So I did the audition and I sent it off, and I thought, there's no way I'll hear back from this because I'm on the other side of the world. The borders are closed, with everything. Australia has this quarantine thing where you've got to quarantine in a hotel for 2 weeks when you land. And there were just so many factors working against me that I really just, I couldn't believe it when I heard that the role was going my way. So, it was a very exciting jolt we were just in our little bubble for 3 months, and suddenly we're like, oh my God. And what's even more exciting, for Angel to come with me into Australia, the borders are closed to citizens only and immediate family.
Okay, so I know this story. We're going to get to it. Okay.
I won't ruin. Okay.
No, I think I know the story, but I think there's some other details. So I'm going to cut that little part off there. That's me. And That's a great teaser. So everyone's going to have to stay tuned at least till the middle of the podcast.
I love it. Okay.
But it's good. I'm happy to hear that you've been busy. I think busy is a great thing to be saying. It's a true blessing, especially in these crazy times, to have things to keep you focused. And congrats on the acting gig. We'll get more into that later as well.
Thank you.
Obviously, during this conversation, we'll be focusing on you. But I would be remiss if I didn't look through sort of like the Mike Sexton prism just for a little bit. Of course, the Cards Chat community joins me and you and the entire WPT family in mourning Mike's passing, but also in celebrating his life. You hosted a 1.5-hour special production on Mike's birthday, September 22nd. It was absolutely wonderful. It was a real treat to watch. It was like middle of the night here in Israel for me, so I know I really enjoyed it. It was worth staying up for. Can you describe on your end what your preparation was like for that and how it felt to be involved in putting it together?
It was such an honor. I mean, Mike's passing was just a horrendous jolt to our hearts. And so when Adam Pliska called and asked, he had been meeting with the family and offered help from the World Poker Tour to host the ceremony virtually, because obviously given 2020, we couldn't have one in person at the moment. And when he called and asked if I would have the honor of emceeing the event, I was floored. Like I just couldn't, I was just so overwhelmed with gratitude and the honor of being able to do that. And I still can't even find words, to be honest. And so the preparation was overwhelming. Mike is an extraordinary man, and to there's just to try and plan something to celebrate him and to do anything remotely try in an attempt to match his extraordinary presence that he had in the world is an impossible task, right?
Sure.
And it was just, it was just really hard. It was a hard couple of weeks,
Hmm.
but I felt like the ceremony went so beautifully, and so many people came together from the World Poker Tour and Mike's family and friends, um, and I just think it just felt really, really beautiful, and I felt like it gave a gorgeous closure, and I'm just so grateful for the hours and hours and hours and hours of love that was shared, all the stories that were shared. Matt Savage hosted the reception afterwards,
Yeah.
7 hour reception, and
Yep.
it was just a literal full day of storytelling, which is exactly what Mike asked for. It's exactly what he wanted, and and he even had a preview of it himself with Mike
Yep.
Mattisau's tribute, which was so wonderful, and he watched every minute of that and loved it. So
Sure.
he wanted something like that for his celebration of
Hmm.
life, and we gave it to him.
Well, I think that your sentiments would be echoed pretty much by everyone, both who participated as well as who watched it. And I know, it really was perfect in a sense, like as perfect as it could be, like you said, in lieu of an in-person event. But in a way, the fact that it was virtual did allow everyone from all over the world to participate in it, regardless of their time zones. There was something, kind of a silver lining in that
Yes,
way. And I
I
do,
agree.
yeah, and I do, obviously, we talk about the tribute. It's not like about a Mike or a Mike tribute or anything, but I do have to ask one other thing that, something very cool that I saw, and, it hadn't been released up until just afterwards. It was a 1 hour special, the Dinner with Mike, that you filmed right after he announced his departure from the WPT for Party Poker. The footage had sort of been sitting on the cutting room floor, and then all of a sudden we got the treat to see it. And everyone, after you go ahead and watch this podcast, I hope you go ahead and tune into that on the WPT's YouTube channel. I imagine that at the time, but even especially now, perhaps it's a memory that you kind of treasure.
Oh
Can you
yeah.
share what it was like to be dining with Mike that evening?
Oh, I was grieving that evening too because him leaving the World Poker Tour
Mm.
was heartbreaking. And so I was so emotional about him leaving because I just couldn't imagine our events without his big smiling face there and his energy there. Thankfully, though, even after he did leave, though, he played as many WPTs as he could. So he was
Right.
there so often, anyhow. So it still felt like he was on the tour. So that
Yep.
was a treat. But yeah, that was a really beautiful evening, just sitting down with the sole purpose of just talking about his life and his stories. And he always impressed me so much with the amount of detail he could remember in his storytelling. And he would be telling you stories from 30, 40 years ago. And he just remembered so many details. He had such a skill in storytelling, and his memory was so impressive. And he
Yep.
never missed a beat. And he was so quick. Like sometimes, when you're talking to him, you might think, oh, he didn't hear that or something, but oh, he did. Like he'll just come back with a quick response. So he'll never miss a beat to give a little needle to someone, or he just. And that's obviously why he was such a brilliant poker player, because his mind was so sharp, and
Sure.
he just really, really absorbed details and
Hmm.
and retained them. And yeah, so his stories are wonderful. And thankfully, because of the internet and the days that we live in now, so many of his stories are recorded, and we have that dinner. And he has his own book, which if you haven't read, it's in an audiobook format, and that's his own voice telling his own stories.
Hmm.
um,
Oh, actually,
yeah,
I
he's
have
just
a copy right here. Okay. Everyone hasn't seen it. There's Life's and Gamble, right?
there it
Right.
is.
Hold on,
He's
it's
so
grabbed
proud
it
of
to
that
me
book.
also. Yeah. And Life's a Gamble. It's a great book. Get it on Amazon or the D&B poker site. It's a great one. What was for dinner? Out of curiosity, do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember. But this is the ongoing thing with Mike. I'm a vegetarian, and so
Oh,
He's just a steak and potatoes. He was always steak and potatoes. And this is the thing. Whenever him and Vince, so he and Vince had this when they were on tour for 18 or 15 years. They were on tour together. They go to steakhouses. Like that was just their thing all the time. And so sometimes I go along, and I've been to so many steakhouses with them, which is just hilarious because I'm a vegetarian.
Sure, sure.
and uh, and so and it was always just kind of this little joke. Actually, we went on a trip to China, and I finally was able to get my revenge, and I took him to a vegetarian cooking class. He was petrified
Oh
of
my
this
goodness.
plant-based meal. He just didn't know how to handle it. He was just the fear in his eyes when he was looking at it. It was so funny. Yeah, but so I would have had something vegetarian, and he would have been needling me somehow for it, probably.
And asking that you should have it with ketchup, if I recall all the stories
Yes,
correctly.
he would have had the finest steak on the menu there. We're at Bellagio. He would have had the finest piece, and then the ketchup all over it. Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Sure. Well, I'm glad that we had a little opportunity to reminisce here about some good memories. And speaking of reminiscing, we got to talk about your career, Lynn. Let's dial it back a little. For those who may not be familiar with your earlier work, you got your start in the poker world doing marketing for Crown Casino in Melbourne, Australia, and then you moved on to become one of the excellent presenters for Poker News. What, if anything, do you miss about those earlier jobs?
Um, oh, well, I feel like I'm still doing a lot of them
Hmm.
right now. I learnt so much in those jobs that like the skills that I learnt there, I'm still using today. So I still feel like I am doing that.
Hmm.
Marketing is where I started, and my brain is just always thinking on a marketing level. I'm always noticing things like that. I love making websites, and I love creating brands, and so I'm still doing that, and I'm always talking with the WPT marketing team and working with them on things. And I always actually tell if anyone ever wants to get into, hosting, presenting, or any kind of public speaking or anything like that, a marketing degree is very helpful. It's a very like general, just to get an understanding of like a broad understanding of business, and then also communicating to an audience. It's super helpful. So there's that. And then also with the reporting that I was doing at Poker News, I still am kind of doing it now at the moment. I'm producing my own videos, which is what I was doing at Poker News. Now that we're in lockdown all over the world and everything's gone online, I'm just making videos from home. Every Sunday I have a video now on World Poker Tour called This Week on the WPT, because we just have so much happening throughout the year all the time, from our different departments, from a live tour online, from our sponsorship events, and all sorts of different aspects of the company. So it kind of like ties it all together. So again, I'm still doing that. So yeah, it's nice to still be doing similar thing, and just constantly trying to improve my ways of doing things. Just
That's good.
yeah,
And you clearly enjoy it. That's
I
such an
do.
important integral component of any sort of work. It's like, well, there's a task you have to do, but it's like, oh no, I want to do this and I want to do it great. It certainly shows in the final product. And
Thank you.
and we do see, look, we see all the poker tours end products. We see your videos, but there is a lot of hard work that goes into those edited, post-produced few minutes each time.
Yes.
What aspects of your job, of your role, do you find most challenging behind the scenes, and what's most fulfilling to you?
Oh, I love these questions.
Good.
I really enjoy. So I think I must have like a controlling personality, because I love learning the entire cake. I want to learn how to make the whole cake. I don't want to just learn the icing and leave everything else. I like to understand how all of the parts come
Hmm.
together. So it is fun for me, even though I am not like an extraordinarily talented editor or anything like that. And I don't want to get to a pro level, but I love learning how to edit, just because then when you have an understanding of how all the parts move, it helps you in the part that you hone in on. You just have a better understanding of how it all pieces together, and what everyone's jobs is like, and how you can support it. So I really enjoy having the the freedom and the ability these days, thanks to just being able to YouTube to troubleshoot how to do something on a piece of software, where 10 years ago you had to get a university degree to learn how to do things like this. It's pretty amazing. So that's very rewarding to me to be able to just keep learning and developing my skills, and so producing stuff and creating stuff on my own. I really, really love that. And I love that the WPT gives me the just total creative freedom to do what I want in terms of that. They really trust me, and they just allow me to, if I have an idea, they're like, sure. They're like, Adam Pliska, he just loves to throw things at the wall and see what sticks. And he's not afraid to step outside of the box, and he leads in that way too. He allows us to do the same. So that is awesome. As for challenging, what's most challenging? Oh, well, probably that too.
I'll give you a minute. You have to think of it. And for those who don't know, by the way, Adam Pliska is the president of the WPT. Oh, yes. Maybe we'll have him on a future podcast. # foreshadowing. Maybe we'll see.
Yes. But the most challenging part of my job has always been bust out interviews. That's just always been the hardest. I cringe at having to do the pressure that sits on you when you have to walk up to someone who has just busted out of a $100,000 buy-in tournament with a microphone and a camera and a light, and chat with them. That's always been the hardest part of my job. But especially when it's in the high roller events, because it's $100,000 that they bought in for, right? Yes. We had a tour called the Alpha A, and that was my role, where I had to interview them all as they were busting out, and it was just exhausting. But I mean, when they're at that level, they're almost expecting it. It's another day at the office type thing, so it was always fine. But I still just trying to find, and I'm sure you relate to this too. It's just like trying to find that balance of, you got to do the job, you got to get it done, but then you want to respect where they're at, and like just finding that nice balance is a task.
Of course. I have to admit, I've never done a bust out interview, but I have made it a point, just in identification with all of the players, to bust out of every tournament that I play in. So I do try my best, so that it resonates. But I have avoided the bust out interview. I know that's very challenging.
Well done.
But, keep it up. Well, if you look at the Hendon mob, I don't have one. That's why. There you go. That's what it's all about. Well, of course, as crazy as 2020 has been for the world, for you, Lynn, it seems like it's been a pretty darn good year overall. I want to start with, this year started with the induction, your induction into the Australian Poker Hall of Fame. It was only in January, but I imagine it probably feels like years ago already.
I cannot believe that was this year.
Right?
Wow, I can't. Yes. Wow.
What does it? So let's take a moment. Let's. Wow, it's only January. But what does it mean to you to have already earned such an incredible accolade, but simultaneously still have many decades of productivity and creativity lying ahead of you? Many people only get involved, inducted into halls of fame towards the end of their careers. You're very much still at the beginning part of it.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah. Thank you. I know that, and that's when I was so flabbergasted when I found out. I was like, "Are you kidding?" Like when you look at the Australian Poker Hall of Fame, it's just full of absolute legends. And all of these people, when I first started in poker, were the ones that I was just like, I'd just idolize, look up to. I was terrified to walk up to them and ask for an interview, just this new kid on the block, like, "Hi, I'm Lynn," and now I'm standing alongside them at my ceremony. I couldn't believe it. It also just freaked me out to think, because the criteria to be inducted is that you've been within the poker industry for a minimum of a decade. And the fact that I have been in the poker industry for well over a decade blows my mind. Where does time go, Robbie? Where does it go?
So long as we're enjoying what we do, that's the whole point. The years do fly by, but in a good way, I think.
Yeah, totally. But that was just such an honor. And also that the ceremony was there where my career started, which was there at Crown. And I had the team that I worked with originally, they all came down for the ceremony. So we all kind of had this beautiful reunion, and we had this long lunch, and some folks from WPT were there as well. Angelica Hale and her husband, Ozzy, they're from Melbourne as well. So they were able to come too. So I felt like I had, a bunch of and then my actual family, my parents were there too. So I just had so many important parts of my world there come together, and we had a gorgeous lunch. It was a 9-hour lunch that we had afterwards, and it was the best day.
That's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My goodness.
Yeah, it was the best.
Great. That's an amazing memory to have.
Yeah.
And speaking of memories, and everyone who's stayed tuned in from that beginning teaser, now's the time to put that story out there. Obviously, another massive life event that you had this year. You got married right at the end of May. So first of all, congratulations to you and to Angel.
Thank you.
Yeah, and as I alluded to earlier, I remember listening to the story of your whirlwind wedding in Las Vegas. I think it was on the Poker News podcast. And you flew to Australia, but I want to hear, I think it bears repeating, and maybe there's some additional wrinkles of that story that you could reflect on now that you sort of it's a few months, behind you now. What's this whole thing been like? What's that whirlwind story? I'd love to hear it again.
Yeah, I love telling it. It's my favorite story. So thanks, Robbie.
Sure.
So it all so Angel and I have been together for 9.5 years. So we were always married by heart, and that's what we would always say. People would always say to us, why aren't you married yet? And because our families are sprawled all over the world, I was born in Ireland, so my extended family's in Ireland, and then my family and all my best friends are in Australia, and then we have friends in the States, and then his family's all in Mexico.
Right.
So the idea of bringing together at least 4 countries was just so overwhelming. So it was something that we're always like, yeah, someday we will. And anyhow, then we were in lockdown in LA for a few months, and then boom, out of nowhere, this movie comes up that I book in Australia. And so I'm like, oh my God. And it moves really fast. Like once you book a film, I had to be pretty much on the next flight because there was only one flight a week into Australia at the time. And so I had to sort of get on the next one. And so, but then because the borders were shut to a citizens only and immediate family, we needed to be married. So we decided on the Wednesday that we were driving to Vegas on the Friday and getting married. And there was obviously no accommodation open because everything was closed. This is on May 22nd. And so we drove to Vegas and back in the same day. We drove there in the morning, and miraculously, I already had a white dress that I had from this beach holiday last year. So I was like, perfect, I'm gonna wear this white dress. And when Angel saw what I was wearing, he's like, hang on a minute, but what am I gonna wear? Because all he had packed was ISO clothes because he flew into LA from Mexico with the intention of just being in lockdown. So, he had pajamas. So, but then I had got him this awesome epic t-shirt for Christmas last year that said, I paused my game to be here, which is so appropriate because he just says poker flat out. So he wore that, which was so fitting. And so we drove over, and then we had a drive-through wedding, COVID approved. So then we didn't have to wear masks. So we were in the car, and we pulled up to a window as if we were pulling up to McDonald's to order fries. And we got married through the car window. And we recorded it so that we have it there. So I know exactly the length. It was 6 minutes, our ceremony. It was the most romantic 6 minutes of our life. And it was fantastic. And then we drove back. We got sushi and ate it in the car and then drove back to LA. And I'll tell you, I swear, when I first went to Vegas 10 years ago, I remember seeing all of the chapels. And I remember thinking, that is so tacky. I would never do that. No way. And now it was the greatest way to get married. It was so romantic because it was just us. There was no stress. We had there was no schedule, and it just was beautiful. We sat in the car together and we were just dreaming up our future. And, of course it would be beautiful to be celebrating with all our loved ones there, but we'll do that at another time. We'll have a party. But to have it just where it was just literally us isolated for the day, it was very romantic.
That's
so
adorable.
I loved it.
It's an amazing story. And look, I got to say, I've been married, 18 years already. I will tell you, a 4.5 hour drive there and another 4.5 hour drive back. If you can survive that together, you can certainly survive at least 18 years together. So,
and
Yeah.
And, and then right after, because we flew to Australia,
Right.
we had to then do quarantine. So we were calling it our quarantine, that it was our free honeymoon paid for by the Australian government in a five-star hotel doing quarantine. And
Amazing.
if you can survive 2 weeks of quarantine in a teeny tiny hotel room with no windows to open, no escape at all. And so the fact that we were able to glide through that with not a single fight for 2 weeks, I think we're set for life.
I think that's wonderful. Well, congratulations. It's an amazing story, and it should just be the first of many, many happy memories as an officially married couple for you. Post-quarantine, you guys took a road trip, honeymoon, across Australia. What was that like, and had you ever done that before?
No, we haven't. And you know what? It got stopped so the plan
Oh,
was, not that it got stopped, but it for a good reason, because I booked another film. So I had come to Australia.
hmm
We flew to Australia because I booked a film. It's called This Little Love of Mine, and it should come out early next year. And it's like a romantic comedy for it's kind of like a teen film. I think it's very cute. And so we filmed that. It was a blast. And
hmm
then afterwards, then we were like, because Melbourne, which is where our next stop was going to be to go visit my parents, they went into lockdown. And so we
Right.
thought, okay, so we'll just hang out in Queensland because life is still pretty normal up in Queensland, and there's pretty much no active cases, and there hasn't really been many at all year. So we thought, okay, we'll stay in Queensland. We'll hire a car and drive up the coast of Queensland because it's pretty huge and it's beautiful. It's all beachy and lovely. So that was the plan. And we got the car and we made one stop. We went from Brisbane to Gold Coast, which is literally a 1 hour drive. That's it. And then I booked a second film. And so then I had to so because of that, I just had to
Oh.
fly right back up to far north Queensland, which is where I filmed the other film. And so went back up again. So we actually never did the road trip. Our road trip lasted 1 hour.
Oh, I didn't realize. I saw the picture and I was like, oh, I wonder why.
Yeah.
What's about this road trip? It got very interesting. Okay. Well, how was
But we still
Brisbane and
intend
how
to
was the
do
Gold
it.
Coast? Was that okay? Was that enjoyable?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's actually where we are now. We came
Oh.
back here. I love the Gold Coast. It's right in the center, sort of Australia on the east coast,
hmm
and just the weather is perfect. But then it's still like a city, so it's like a beach town, but a big city merged into one. And
Right.
they've got a beautiful casino here, the Star Gold Coast, which is actually where the World Poker Tour, where we have
Oh,
our
right.
events. So it's
hmm
our Aussie home. So
Right.
I sort of feel like this is a perfect place to just plant ourselves at the moment.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure most of our, I believe, overwhelmingly American audience, it's important to distinguish. We're not referring to the Gold Coast, which is across the street, to the Rio, two very, very different
Right.
properties. All respect to the Gold Coast. I've stayed there many, many, many nights, but two very different properties. I would recommend, I haven't been to the one in Australia, but I would recommend going there. So
Yeah.
I have to do it. Lynn, we've spoke a little bit about this before, but I do want to get back into it because it's just it's really something to marvel at. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into the whole in real life to digital transition that the World Poker Tour has made, but you guys have pivoted so gracefully and so seamlessly into everything online, everything digital during this pandemic. It's really admirable. Obviously, we spoke about all the videos that you've done. You spoke about, hearkening back to your experience with Poker News, but what has sort of that transition been like for you? You used to be going to all of the events, you used to be going to the HyperX Sports or esports arena in Las Vegas, doing everything live, and now you're just in front of a green screen. What's that like for you?
Yeah. Uh, at first, to be honest, I kind of enjoyed just the stillness for a little moment because so I have this app where I send all my flight itineraries to it and it tells me how many miles I've flown in as long as I've been tracking. And so for the last, I think I started in 2011 using this app and I've circled the planet 54 times.
Oh my
So
God. Wow.
yes, it's like something like
Wow.
1.2 million miles or something. outrageous. So for those first few months, I was like, you know what? I'm pretty excited to just put my suitcase away and get into a good routine of cooking and being, and then, and honing into new skills because when you're on the road and you're whizzing around, I don't have time to sit in front of my laptop editing videos for 8-10 hours or something, which is how long it takes to edit videos. So
wait, you're saying like a 3-minute
just,
video that we see takes 8 to 10 hours?
it can sometimes, yeah. Can take a long time
That's
depending on how
unbelievable.
much is involved in the video.
Wow.
But
Respect.
just to
I
set
did
up
not realize
alone,
it's that
like
much. That's incredible. And I hope all of our whole audience is just like standing up and applauding. That's unbelievable. Good for you. Wow. Match respect there.
thank you. And I mean, a lot of it too, once you become an expert, if you hire us, it's not going to take that long, but because I'm sort of teaching myself as well as I go, also just to set up because I'm moving and I'm hopping around from Airbnbs and hotel rooms at the moment, like popping up the green screen and trying to get enough pillows to balance it right and then getting the right light in front of the right window, like all of that in
Sure.
itself takes like an hour.
Sure.
It's there's a lot that goes into it. It's quite a beast, but it's a fun challenge.
Hmm.
So yeah, but that's kind of what the main transition has been, is just this honing in new skills and exploring this new realm, which is really the direction that we were always going in a way,
Hmm.
obviously aligned with real life,
Right.
but now it's just been sort of sped up to go completely virtual for a while. And
Sure.
I guess the positive that's going to come out of that, once we return back to real life, we've enhanced our virtual life in such an
Mm.
amazing way that we're kind of just like, I feel like we've just accelerated it like 5-10 years of growth, what we would have had this not happened in terms of what we can do online now. So um, who knows? I think hopefully, when we go back, it's just lots of positives can hopefully come from this.
I love that. It's a great
Yeah.
outlook. And about positive outlook, it does certainly lead into my final question. You didn't see it in advance, but it's a really nice dovetail, good segue there. When we first met, Lynn, in South Florida a few years back, I remember asking you in an interview about your motto, hashtag life is good. And as mentioned in the introduction to this podcast, you are genuinely one of the most positive people in the poker industry. And you might be a burgeoning actress, but that positivity, that smile that you see here on video, it's not an act. So with that said, I'm sure that even you have your up days and you have your down days. But what I'm hoping with our last question here is that you could perhaps give our Cards Chat community a few words of inspiration. With all of this craziness, with this whole pandemic and the world upside down, how can we nonetheless aspire to fulfill that motto of life is good?
Oh, I love this question. I think the easiest shortcut to trying to help pull ourselves out of whatever funk we might be in, or when we're having our down days, because we all have them, is just gratitude. Like it's just, and I feel like it's cliche saying it because it just sounds like an Instagram quote, but but it is true, and that's why we keep hearing it. When you, our perception is what dictates how we feel about so many things, and um, you often in our good days we're perceiving things in a much more positive light, and it's on our bad days that we're seeing more of what's missing or we're seeing more of what's wrong. And it's just about training the brain in the same way that we train our biceps at the gym. You have to do it repeatedly. You can't just go to the gym once and suddenly look like the Hulk. Like you need to keep going, right?
Right.
And it's a slow process. It's a grind, and it's the same with the brain, to sort of keep it a little bit more in control, because it's so easy with the influences that we have, especially right now when the media and when the story that's going on in the world right now is so fear driven, that our brain kind of keeps going that way. And we are built that way too, because we're animals in the wild, and we're built to sort of protect ourselves. So we are going to look at what's wrong because we're going to need to protect. And I think just constantly looking, rather than trying to see what's missing, trying to see what's wrong, what's right. Are you taking a big deep breath right now? How lucky are you right now? Because there are a lot of people with lungs that are not working very well right now. Yeah, you taking a nice big deep breath. Do you have 2 feet to walk on? Like there's just things that that so many people don't have, that we take for granted, and we don't know until we've lost it just how much we needed that, and how grateful, how much easier it made our life. And it's just so easy to take our bodies for granted, and what we have for granted, by this sort of comparison mode that we're all in all the time with social media and with TV, and just bringing it back to yourself and the amazing machine that is our body, that we are gifted with, and just back to basics as much as you can.
That's a great answer. And thank you. And on a personal level, it's important for me to hear these words. I think we can, I'm going to be listening back to this and watching it again. It's a great message. It's an important message. And thank you. I appreciate that. You aced the test. That's all of my questions, Lynn. But in our final segment of the show, what we always do, we turn to our Cards Chat community, and we want to see what questions you guys out there wanted to ask our guests. Just a couple questions this time from our community member, Shells. So question number one from Shells, Lynn, who are, again, we're gonna pin you on this one. Who are your favorite poker players and why?
Oh, well, my husband, Angel Guillen, is absolutely my favorite poker player.
Of course he is.
Am I allowed to say anyone else?
You are, yes.
He is amazing. He's Mexico's #1 poker player, and I'm so proud of him. And he might not know this, he works for the World Poker Tour. He does the Spanish commentary. So basically they recreate our show in Spanish, and he and his one of our dear friends, Santiago, they do the commentary. So they're like Mike and Vince roles.
Right.
And yeah, and I love that we both host the same show. I think that's cute. So he's my favorite poker player, Mike Sexton. Mike Sexton takes a very close second.
Okay, that's fair. We'll get into Shell's second and final question here. What do you like to do away from the poker scene? And I suppose if I can hone it a little bit, let's say beyond the things, activities, acting, etc., that you've already mentioned on today's show.
Oh, so I'm finding out in my adult life that I am a creative person. I never realized that I was at school, I think because I went to a very creative school, which was full of theatrical actors, which I'm not. I can't sing, so I could never do theater. So I thought I wasn't an actor. I gave up actually as a kid, and I rediscovered acting again in my 30s. And same with creativeness. There was a huge arts community at my high school also, and these were incredible artists painting murals and things. And so because I couldn't do that, I was like, well, I'm not an artist. And so I was very I did accounting, legal studies, psychology, math. I did advanced math and computers. I was I just wasn't creative at school at all. Sure. And so now only in the last 5 years, I'm realizing I am actually an extremely creative person. And so I'm always trying to, and it's playful, but all humans are creative and in their own way. And that's also what I'm realizing. What my creativity looks is very different to yours, Robbie, and it's very different to everyone who's watching. Some people are very creative on Excel spreadsheets. It doesn't have to be painting a mural. And so that's what I'm having fun with. I'm constantly trying to just do something that's creative, and it looks completely different each day. Whether it is a painting that might be rubbish, but it's just fun to mash colors together. Sure. Or if it's painting a pot in the garden, or I'm gardening, or I'm just rearranging my furniture, or anything. I just love to a quote that changed my life actually is life is art, and I love to live by this way, which kind of ties in with your last question as well, about going back to gratitude, but also looking at your life as an art piece. Helena Bonham Carter said this quote, and it's a long one, but it's just life is art. She looks at everything as art, the way she walks, the way she writes, the way she brushes her hair, the way she the way she makes her tea. And when you look at life in that way, it makes it so much more fun. And why would we not? Why would we not look at our life as a great, ginormous art piece? Because it is, just. And then if making your cup of tea, then suddenly you just slow down because you're paying more attention to what it is that you're doing. So that's what I like to do outside of everything.
That's an
It's a
awesome
very long answer.
No, that's a great answer, and I'm really happy to hear that. And look, we only had 2 questions from our forum members. That's first of all, thank you very much, Shells, for sending in those questions. And just a reminder to all of you guys out there in Cards Chat land in the community and on the forums, we'd love to see you submit your questions for future podcast guests, and we can hear more interesting artistic nuggets from our interviewees. There is a dedicated thread for it on the forums, guys. And of course, please be sure to give us a good review on iTunes and spread the word about this podcast via your social media channels if you like the show. Thank you very much, Lynn Gilmartin. Thank you all. Yeah, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Cards Chat Podcast. I'm Robbie Strazynski. You can follow me on Twitter @CardPlayerLife. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.